Look, it's 12 o'clock. It's just past 12. So we are going to kick it off formally and officially. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Cliff Morgan. And if you don't know who I am, well, I've had a career that spanned over 17 years in the Air Force. And when I left the military full time, I went and became an organizational psychologist. And so I bring this, psychological expertise and the military experience. I put them together and I work with leaders to help them get the most out of their people at work. And, I've been doing this for a whole lot of 6 years now, running my own business consulting, and I find it so fun working with leaders. I find it really meaningful, and it is such a great privilege for me to actually help you guys unlock your potential and operate at a higher level. So I wanted to just start things off today by asking you a question, and again, kind of getting that engagement rolling. And so that question is, what makes an effective leader? If you were to narrow it down to one thing, what would that one thing be that makes a leader effective or not? And so I want you to think about that, put that in the chat. What would the one thing be if you were to narrow it down to one thing? So we've got trust. Chris has got trust in there. Andy's got trust. Yes. Lockie's setting the vision. Empathy, vision. Right. Annette's got vision as well. Yes. Zane's saying influence. Yes. Leadership is influence. You've got to have influence if you're going to be effective. Glenn's saying a person who gets the team to achieve. Josh is saying vulnerability, honesty, authenticity. Right. That's three things. Josh, I said one. But great qualities that you're putting up there. All right. So I want to kind of, everything you've put up there is incredibly important from leadership, but I kind of want to challenge it slightly. And there's something that that none of you have said and none of you have put in the chat. And so I do want to just kind of provoke your thinking a bit, I guess, as we go about today's session. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And to kind of answer that question in a slightly different way, well, I want to go back to the famous industrialist. You're one of the leader, what do you call him? A very famous leader anyway. And that's Peter Drucker. And he says, leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Leadership is defined by the results, not by attributes. Okay. And ultimately, if you think about it, it's the results that a leader achieves that determines whether or not they're effective. Okay. Now, yes, there's a whole lot of, there's going to be levels of effectiveness. There's also the kind of moral lens that you can put on leadership as well, and say whether or not this is a good person or a good leader or a bad leader. But when it comes to effectiveness, then ultimately it's the results that a leader achieves. Leadership is all about influencing a group of people in order to achieve some sort of common goal or some sort of result. Right? It's not just influence for influence's sake. It's influence with a purpose, influence in order to achieve something. And so whether or not the person achieves that determines whether or not they are effective as a leader. I mean, you could look at one of the most effective leaders or some of the most effective leaders throughout history. And the reality is that Hitler was one of the most effective leaders that the world has known. So was Napoleon. So was Genghis Khan. And you look at these people and, so often we look historically through a lens of, morality and were they good people? Were they good leaders? And that's a different kind of question to ask. But whether or not you are effective as a leader ultimately comes down to the results you achieve. Peter Drucker isn't just the only one who talks about this. There's a great book out there called Zenger and Folkman, or The Extraordinary Leader by Zenger and Folkman. I've actually got it here on my desk. I'm looking at it now. And basically say leaders are wonderful, maybe wonderful human beings, but if they don't produce sustained, balanced results, then simply they are not good leaders. All right. And, Paul Getty, he's a bit more ruthless when he says it. He says it doesn't take much, or it doesn't make much difference how much of knowledge or experience an executive possesses. If he is unable to achieve results through people, he is worthless as an executive. It's a bit more brutal in that assessment. But just to kind of highlight this kind of need for results, I got another book I've got here called Result-Based Leadership, and they put it into an equation, and they say effective leadership equals attributes times results. And so this is for all the engineers that are online. Glenn, I know that you'll probably enjoy this. So when you think about it, right, my daughter at the moment, she's learning times tables, and she loves to say, well, I know my 1 times table, my 5 times table, my 7 times table. But she also knows that when you times anything by 0, the outcome is 0. And so you might be an effective, or you might be a leader that has 100% of the attributes that are going to, that people associate with leaders. But if you've got no results, right, you have 0 in the results thing, then the result is, when it comes to your effective leadership or leadership effectiveness, is going to be 0. All right, 0, anything times 0 is 0. And so it just kind of highlights, I think, the importance of results. And so often, I think there's been too much attention placed on the attributes aspect of leadership. And 100% leaders' attributes are important. The trust, the character, they are some of the most important things that leaders can have. The influence that they build, the relationship that they have with the people they lead. All right. Again, if that attributes piece is 0, then the results is going to be 0. The leadership equation is going to be 0 as well. All right. So they are absolutely 100% important. But when we talk about, the attributes in leadership, so often we select leaders because of attributes, not because of the results they achieve. A lot of leadership development is focused on developing kind of these attributes. We want people to be relatable. We want them to have kind of people skills and do all that sort of stuff. And so often there's a lack, I guess, of attention on results and actually producing outcomes. And as a result of that, there's a lot of leaders out there, and I encounter a lot of leaders and work with a lot of leaders that don't necessarily understand the nature of results that leaders should be chasing, that should be trying to achieve. And therefore, they can't be intentional about leading in a way that actually achieves those results. So, in the remainder of the session today, we're going to explore this concept of results and what results we should be chasing as leaders in order to have sustainable, healthy, high-performing organizations. All right, and then we can understand that the nature of results in the workplace, the different types of results we could and should be chasing. We can be not only more intentional about chasing those results, but we're also going to avoid some of the what I call handicapping habits, the habits that handicap our leadership when it comes to this particular area. Okay, so the first thing that I want to kind of talk about is the nature of results. And when it comes to the results that we are chasing, are we chasing outputs or outcomes? And again, they're both important. They are both really important. But it's important to understand the difference between the two, and it's important to understand where our focus should be. So when it comes to outputs, all right, so often, they're quantitative. They're often really objective and task related. And it can kind of be like, yes, we did that. All right. We can measure them. And it can become a bit of a tick box exercise. The outcome, however, right, it's often much more qualitative. There's a subjective element to the outcome. It's often much more experiential for those stakeholders who are kind of involved. The outcome is often the intent and purpose behind the output. All right. And so to give you a couple of examples here, I know we've got a couple of people online who are from RSL Queensland, and RSL has an employment program. And so, the outputs of the employment program might be that we put 100 people through the training and through the program, right? The outcome of the program, however, would be that in 12 to 24 months' time, we have X amount of people who are still gainfully employed in their role. And so you can see that just by training people and putting through the program, which is kind of like the quantitative side of things, but it's the qualitative experience of the people at the end that really provides the outcome. All right. We might have a couple of other examples. I know there's some, people from corrections that are also joining on the webinar today. So, we might have a recidivism program, and the outputs might be, again, to put people through the program. The outcome would be 12 to 18 months' time, the rate of people that ended up back incarceration, or those that stayed out. From a corporate leadership perspective, we might be leading the implementation of a new software across the organization. And so you might have the output being the number of people training in that software, versus the outcome might be the organization successfully using the software and reaping the benefits from doing so. All right. There's no point kind of putting everybody through the training, but then if they're not using the software and they're still doing the old practices, there's no benefit being reaped. The output is there, but the outcome is not. And so often I think people will focus, and leaders will focus on the outputs because that's measurable. It's tasks, all right? And it's kind of, it's something that you can concrete, that you can put your hand on. The outcome, however, is much more subjective. And so therefore it's harder to conceptualize sometimes, it's harder to measure, and people don't necessarily focus on it. The reality is, though, that effective leaders only chase outputs in the pursuit of outcomes, all right? The outputs so often are the lead indicators towards the outcome, but they don't necessarily determine the outcome. So as I said before, outputs are really important. You have to get the tasks done in order to achieve the outcome. But really the outcome is the focus, all right? It's the purpose and the intent behind the initiative, the project, the task. And are we completing the task in a way that achieves the outcome? So what I want you to do, just listening to that, what are some of the outcomes that you are responsible for in your workplace? So I want you to think about one, what's your primary outcome? And throw that in the chat. I think the other aspect, while some of those answers are coming through about the difference between outputs and outcomes, is also a time frame perspective. Outputs are often fairly short time frame. whereas outcomes often have a much longer time frame. And as you saw in kind of the examples that I was giving there, you've got a training program, which is a short term kind of initiative, but then the outcome is 12 to 18 months down the track, whether or not people are still employed or receiving the benefits from the training program, right? There's a long-term aspect to outcomes versus the short term. So I can see Julia has put in here, we've got developing capability for sustained growth. Excellent. Lockie saying, seeing owners utilize their time effectively. Yeah, certainly. James Harcourt's putting in invoicing targets and monthly and quarterly. So invoicing targets, all right, I'd say that that's pretty much an output, James. So the question I would ask is, those invoicing targets and monthly and quarterly, they're really important for the profitability of the organization, but it's probably the outcome is going to be that profitability piece, right? Repeat clients, Patty's saying overcome to create solid foundations for employees nationally. Yeah. So you can see some of these outcomes that they're quite high level, and that's often the case. And they're often, there's an intangible quality to some of the outcomes that we talk about. All right. When we start looking at these in a further way, all right, this is where we come to the first of those handicapping habits. And these are these habits that handicap our leadership. And the first one is that leaders focus on outputs rather than outcomes. And so you can achieve the output, you can complete the task, but not reap the benefit from doing so. And when leaders focus solely on outputs rather than the outcome, doing the task in a way that reaps the intended benefit, then they often get really frustrated, okay? Because they're like, I'm doing what I need to, I'm doing what I should be doing, but I'm not seeing the benefit. And the frustration is not experienced only by the individual leader, but it's also by the organization as well. And ultimately, for those that are concerned about career progression, it has an impact there as well. The higher up in the organization, they look down and, they see leaders and they go, hey, they're working really hard. They're doing these things. They're hitting these numbers, but they're not actually they're not achieving the specific, desired impact, I guess. All right, the next one we've got there is a focus on the short term rather than the long term, which is really important as well. Skipped a slide. What we don't want to do is just focus so intently on the short term that we miss the long-term benefits. Okay, and again, that's related to the outcome there. This slide here is to talk about that results happen at multiple levels across the organization. And, this is basically a really basic form of strategy in your organization. You're going to have some form of this. The language may be different. You may not have lines of effort. You may have areas of focus or, key strategic areas. Rather than objectives, you might have goals. Whatever the language is, it's going to look something like this. And you can see that line there that goes across the top. Really, everything above that line is going to be an outcome. It's going to be a fairly high level, and that's because it's strategic and strategy is high level. And everything below that is putting the legs, the implementation on the strategy. It's the tactical side of things that you need to do. Everything above that line is likely to be an outcome, all right? Whereas below that line, that's where you're going to see your outputs. Now, you are also going to have outcomes below that line, but that's kind of where it is. And the important thing to understand here is that when you start chasing results, you need to make sure that they're aligned to the strategy of the organization, that they are the right results. If you're chasing results that aren't part of the organizational strategy, then you're going to end up rubbing against the rest of the organization. You're going to start having some conflict there, and you're not going to realize the benefits of an entire group of people working in one direction. The other aspect here, right, is that great leaders, they don't just focus on their result in their area, okay, at their level. So I start working with a lot of leaders, and they're focusing on these results. They're actually doing quite well in their small patch within the broader organization, right? But great leaders, they make sure that their results aren't being achieved at the expense of the results around the rest of the team, the rest of the company. They would be working to, hey, how do I achieve my results in a way that helps and assists someone in the other department? It might be in the training side of things, but again, if you're focused purely on your part of the bigger, broader training initiative, if we go back to the software kind of analogy, right? You might be in the training department of the organization, and your part is purely to focus on the output of providing the training, right? But the outcome really is responsible kind of outside your department. It's in the service delivery arm of the organization, but you've got to work with them in a way to provide the training that actually facilitates them implementing outside the department. So rather than just punching through the training and getting your key result done, you can actually work with other departments to say, hey, how can we tailor this training in order to increase implementation, right? And so you see there, it's looking at the outcome and then tailoring how you achieve the output in a way that assists the rest of the organization to achieve their overall outcomes that are desired. And when we start talking about this, right, a couple of more handicapping habits. So the first one is chasing results that are not aligned to strategy. As I said, okay, if you get into the habit of doing this, you're going to come into conflict with other elements, groups within your organization and your leadership. And the other habit there is fixating on results at one level and in one area of the organization. If you want to be a great leader, if you want to be truly effective, and you want to have kind of this reputation that allows you to be the go-to person that's brilliant across the organization, well, you need to be able to, yes, achieve your results, but achieve it in a way that helps others achieve. All right, you need to be able to relating things, collaborating with other teams across the organization. And as one of the questions that I would ask you is, what are some of the results that you are focused on? And it's a great exercise to write down all the key results that you are responsible for achieving, and then who are the other people that you could collaborate with in order to achieve this role, or make the achievement of that result more effective and beneficial for the organization. It's an exercise that I often take coachees through when I'm coaching them, and often there's a lot of light bulb moments when we go through that. The next thing here, right, is the type of results. So we kind of looked at the nature of results and whether or not they're outputs versus outcomes. All right, we've looked at where different results fit in the broader picture of the organization, and this is the different types of results that you can look at. And I want to put 3 up there We've got organizational results, we've got employee results, and we've got customer results. Okay, and this is adapted out of the work from results-based leadership that I mentioned before. But if we look at the results that we seek to achieve, really they will fall into one of these four areas. And there is a fourth type of results that I'll talk about a little bit later. But we've got organizational results, okay? And the results of whether or not they fall into each of these categories really determined by who is the primary beneficiary of the initiative or the results, the benefit, the outcome that we are looking at. So if we think about the organizational results, the results that make the organization healthy, the results that help the organization grow and move forward and be successful and execute on strategy in order to achieve the mission, right? They're the results where the organization is the primary beneficiary. Then we've got, the employee results. And these are, again, they're the results that make the employee or the employees are the primary beneficiary of. And these might be the rewards and the recognition systems. It might be training and investment in staff. It might be, different initiatives that you've got that really make the employee experience really special. And then we've got the customer results, right? And this is whatever kind of organization that you're part of, it's going to serve someone. So the customer, whether it's in a retail, is literally, the customer. It might be, whoever it is in your scenario. Now, there is a fourth type, and that's the shareholder results. So anyone that is in a public company that has shareholders, or even in a private company where there's equity stakes being held there, there is also the results that belong to them, right? Or the shareholders are the primary beneficiaries. And so these results are generally around profitability, okay, or some sort of return on investment for the investment that they've made in the organization. Okay, if you're working in government, and I know that there is a couple of people who are online where that's the case, then potentially the political results maybe fit into this kind of category here. But as you'll notice, there is a bit of an overlap with each of those results, and so you are going to have initiatives, outputs, outcomes where the beneficiary of those is multiple, right? And where you see that, you might think about that software, introducing a new type of software, right? That may be an organizational result in terms of the efficiency dividends that are derived from the implementation of that software, and it allows to execute on kind of the strategy of the organization. But there may be a whole lot of employee benefits, the experience, it will reduce frustration for staff. And so the employee experience is increased as a result. And so you can see that some of those initiatives will fall into the overlap there. And what I wanted to do was kind of highlight, what does that look like? Well, in that place where we've got organizational results and employee results, that's where we get good culture, okay? And when we've got organizational results, so the organization is healthy, it's successful, it's growing, and people look at it from an outside, it's got a great reputation, and the customer is actually receiving the benefits, they're getting their results from engaging with the organization. Well, that's when we build brand loyalty, all right? And that's where they say, hey, this is an awesome organization. I have a great experience with them. I'm going to stick with them. I'm going to come back to them. That's where you get your repeat business, okay? And then finally, we've got the the employee results and the customer results. And where that overlap is where we get this concept of what I call an organization of choice. And, some of the people online here, when I've worked with you individually, you might have heard me talk about this, but um, really what I think allows organizations to be sustainable, healthy, high-performing organizations. If you was mucking around with the acronym of that, and so sustainable, healthy, high-performing organizations is like a SPO, right? I don't think that term's going to catch on, but really sustainable and healthy organizations, they provide a great experience for the people that are involved in that organization. And to kind of illustrate this point, there's an organization that I know that was under essentially they grew too fast. Okay, that was the core of their problem, or the initial part of the problem. And a lot of organizations do. Young founders, they have a lot of energy, and they drive and grow and they grow, but they don't necessarily have the systems and the structures in place to support the growth. And that was the case with this organization. And what ended up happening was the executive of that company started to they focused on the organizational results too much. They wanted to secure the financial sustainability of the organization. And so they put a number of changes that they were pursuing in place, and they didn't actually consider the employee results or the customer results when they were chasing those organizational results. And as a result, the experience for both customers and employees dropped away. And that meant that the staff, because they were trying to implement these changes to secure the financial sustainability, they focused solely on that. The staff had a really poor experience of trying to implement the changes. The changes were trying to be done too quickly, and it interfered with a lot of the other employee results that they were trying to chase. And as a result of that, they had a number of key staff leave, which kind of only increased the pressure, but it also meant that the staff that were remaining weren't having a great time and experience, which meant when they interacted with their customers, the customer experience wasn't as great. And there weren't as many staff to support the customers as well, which meant they had customers leaving the organization, which only increased the financial hardship of the organization. And so when we start talking about this, it's really important that leaders take a balanced approach to all three areas. And really what makes an organization successful, sustainable, and healthy is that they become an employer of choice for their staff. And that's where the employees have a great experience. And they're like, yes. And then they also become a service provider of choice for the customers, or a brand of choice if it's a product-based business. And that's where with his concept of an organization of choice is where the people having such a great experience that they come together in order to produce the organizational results. And if you've got people that are happy and having a great experience, then they're going to be motivated to work more and commit to trying to achieve the organizational results. And if you've got customers that are really happy and achieving experiencing the benefits of the result that the organization wants from them, then they're going to keep coming back, right? And therefore, the combination of that means that you're going to more likely to achieve those organizational results as well. I like to think about this whole importance of maintaining a balanced approach to the pursuit of these types of results, a bit like a bar stool, right? We've got three legs there, and if any one of them is too short, then it's an uncomfortable experience. If you think about it, if you're in a pub and you sit at a bar stool and the chair's rocky, you don't enjoy it. And so often what happens is you actually get up and you put that bar stool aside and you find another one. And that's what happens in today's world. It has never been easier for our people to leave our organizations and go and find employment elsewhere. And that whole concept of the war for talent is really prevalent at the moment. And so if we as leaders have an unbalanced approach and just kind of one of um, these areas of results is lacking or receives less attention than the other, then our people ultimately, whether they be employees or whether they be customers, are going to go elsewhere. Now, when I say that we need to have a balanced approach to these results, it's actually really important that that balance occurs across the organization. Depending on where you are, at what level, will depend on how much you focus on each of these results. So if you're in a customer relations role, you're going to spend more time, energy, and attention trying to achieve customer results than what you would employee results or organizational. If you're in an HR role, however, you're probably going to be focusing more on the employee results. And if you're an executive level, well, then those organizational results are front of mind often a lot more. The reality is that the higher up you go in the organization, the more balanced your approach needs to be. So if you're a CEO, you need to be focusing on all three. If you are, the leader of a particular department, then you're probably going to have a skew somewhat. It might be an interesting exercise for you to sit down and think, if I've got 100 points of time, energy, and attention, how would I allocate them across all three? And it may vary depending, but the important thing is that you are actually putting some of your attention into all three. All right. And as I say, the higher up you go, the more senior level leader you are, the more equal that distribution should be across each of those. So I want you to think about, what are some of the results? Where would you put the majority of your time, energy, and attention? And I want you to put that in the chat. All right. If you were to put more focus in one area, where would that be? I think it's also really important to notice, right? That balance is so important. I'm just looking at the some of the things coming through here. Chris Gould, staff education, those employee results, great. Andy Gainsworth, organizational, yes, you're kind of at that executive level, all right. Matt Bowers, all right, good culture, yes. So that combination of organizational and employee results. Kerry Bells saying organization and client. Annette Sharp is employee, yes, in that training role for you, Annette. It's really good. What do we got? Nathan is saying hard to weight organizational employees over each other. Yeah, it is, right? And so here's one of the things, Nathan, in response to that, is that sometimes, okay, when you actually, in order to pursue the balance occurs over the long term. Okay, we've got three results here, and you might use the analogy of braiding a rope or braiding hair, where you've got three bits and you put one over the top, and then you take another and you deal with that strand, and then you do with that strand. And so you may go through different seasons where your time, energy, and attention is taken up by one or more, kind of one of these more so than the others. And so you might be going through a bit of a change project internally, and you might find that, hey, we've got to put the organizational thing on first, right? And then we're going to, move, the customer is going to take a back seat for a season. And as you kind of do the implementation of that change, really, you've got to focus on reaping the benefits for your staff to kind of cement the change initiative. And so you'll be focusing on the employee results. And then you come back once that's kind of implemented, and you focus back on the customer, right? And so just as you're braiding a 3-branded cord, you might be focusing on one at a time, but you get a balanced approach over the extended period. Okay, some of the people that I coach find that a really beneficial analogy. The key there is not to spend too long on any one type of results and leave the others to languish, I guess. All right. When we talk about the handicapping habits, all right, it's really becoming tunnel visioned on one type of results. As I kind of mentioned in that example before, the executive leadership of that organization became tunnel visioned on the organizational results and let the people results, both customer and employee, start to languish. And so as a result of that, they ran into troubles. What I wanted to do now is, how do we really effectively try and chase results in a way that avoids some of these handicapping habits? Okay, and there's a bit of a process that I want to take you through. So pursuing results effectively, it's a 5-step process. Okay, and really there are 5 questions that you need to ask yourself. The first one is, what is the outcome that I'm after? All right. Remember, we want to primarily focus on the outcome. Begin with the end in mind, says Stephen Covey. And yes, we need to think about what are the outputs that are going to lead up to the outcome, but we need to start with the outcome. What is the experience of people? What is the benefit of the results that we want to achieve? And again, if you can't clearly articulate what that outcome is, then you can't be intentional about developing an action plan and pursuing that outcome. So I encourage you to write down the answers to each of these questions. So the next one is, what do I need to do to achieve it? So you might actually ask yourself, what are the outputs that are required to achieve the outcome? And what do I need to do in order to achieve those? Again, clearly articulating it is going to help you plan. The third one is, and this is the important one, so often leaders will kind of intuitively go through the first 2 steps at some level. They may not get a whole lot of clarity out of it. That's what their subconscious thinking. And then they start to go and execute. But here's the game changer for really great, luminary, effective leaders. How do I want people to feel at the end? All right, this is the people experience of it. Okay, and so then you ask the 4th question, which is, how do I do what I need to in a way that makes people feel what I want them to? All right, how do I do what I need to in a way that makes people feel how I want them to? And so, this happens, this can apply at multiple levels. So you might talk at a strategic level and you talk about the outcomes there. And you might have organization-wide initiatives, and this completely applies. But it also, you can apply this at the tactical level, and you say, hey, I need to make sure the outcome that I want is a cohesive team and a high-performing team. What I need to do is have a performance conversation with one of the team members who is underperforming, right? And what I need them to understand is this particular area that they're not hitting the standard. Now, how do I want them to feel at the end of that? Well, hey, I want them to feel like they are supported and they are a valued member of the team, and that they have access to the resources they need to be able to perform at the same level as the rest of the team. Okay, now what do I need to do in order to have the conversation, the performance conversation, in a way that makes them feel that way? So that's going to really frame the language and how you set the context to that conversation as well. And then that fifth thing is you repeat the process for each type of result that you are responsible for. Okay. And really, if you do that, then you're going to make sure that you achieve the results that you need to, but providing a great experience for people at the same time. In the book that I put up before, Extraordinary Leader by Zenger and Folkman, it's a great book. They're looking at research of 60,000 leaders, 200,000 subordinate. So there's a whole lot of data in there, and they looked at the people in the 90th percentile. So it's the top 10% of leaders in that massive data set. And there were two key factors, right? One was focus on results, and one was, great interpersonal skills and providing a great people experience. And what they found, if leaders in that 90% only were strong in one of those two, the percentage of leaders in that 90 percentile was only single digits. But what they found was 60% of the leaders in that top 10% cohort had the combination of a focus on results and great people skills. Okay. And so this process here is how you kind of focus on the results that you need to by providing that great people experience. And if you can do that, then that's going to set you apart. It's going to put you in that really effective leader category, which is really important. So Lael, the book is called The Extraordinary Leader, all right, by John Zenger and Joseph Folkman. All right, so The Extraordinary Leader. It's actually a great book. It's one of the best leadership books I own, but it's actually one of the least well-known books on my bookshelf. So I'd encourage you all to read that. While we focus on results, I actually kind of want to almost start to wrap things up by this quote here. Stephen Covey, the great, great leadership guru, he says, over time, I've come to this simple definition that leadership is getting results in a way that inspires trust. And I think that is so important. This session has been all about results, but ultimately, it is we can get results so focused on results that we forget the people, right? But being able to achieve the results in a way that provides a great experience, that it inspires trust, is really kind of that I guess the holy grail of leadership, right? And that's where we all want to aim for. And so, I work with a lot of CEOs and executive teams, and really to kind of do that, achieve that, right? It's achieve the results in a way that inspires trust, in a way that gets the most out of their people and provides a great experience for their people. And so if that's something that you would be interested in finding out more, then just put yes, please in the chat, and I'll reach out to you. We can have a conversation around what your needs might be. Right, whether that's individual coaching, whether that's training or some sort of program in your organization, we can have a chat about what that might look like. So if you want some help with that, put yes, please in the chat. And hey, a special announcement that I also wanted to make just before I take a moment to answer some questions, all right? And so that is that my book, which many of you will have known is coming, that is now available for pre-order. And so you can jump online there at cliffordmorgan.com.au and you can follow the bouncing ball, and you can place a pre-order for the book that's coming out later this year. And for a special discount just for this webinar, if you put July webinar, that discount code there, you can get 20% off. Okay, so that is there. All right, and I look forward to, well, hopefully you guys are interested in that. But now, hey, I wanted to give you guys some time to ask some questions. What questions did you have? Okay, so one of the most common questions I get, right, is how do I, in my level, or my people's level, this is a great concept for senior leaders that have got to do the balanced, achieve that balance across the organization. But at my level, I just don't have an influence over the organizational results, or I don't have an influence over the employee results. And what I would say is that, yes, you completely do. All right. It's just a matter of thinking in a different way. You might not have KPIs that fall into one of those areas, but what you do have is an ability to shape the outcome of those that do. And so that might be collaborating with them, that might be supporting with them, but it's also think more about the outcome and experience of people within your sphere of control. All right, you might be lower down in the organization, but you can always say, hey, I've got to hit this KPI, but how do I build a great team at the same time? All right, organizationally, we want to have a great culture. How do I influence that in my sphere of control? All right, it may be that you just need to understand the organizational strategy a little bit more. And so therefore going and having a conversation with your leader about, hey, can you explain to me the strategy in a greater detail? That is going to be so much beneficial. One, it'll give you insight as to how you can contribute, but also it's going to show that you are being proactive as a leader, and that's going to put you on their radar to give you potentially more responsibility, opportunities that may advance you and give you more influence to have a greater impact. All right, and I'm not about climbing the ladder for the sake of ladder, but I do help people, climb that ladder so that they can have greater influence and more impact and more provide a greater benefit in the world around them. All right, we're starting to see some questions come through here. All right. Right, plenty of challenges achieving effective leadership in current times in a particular industry. That's from Glenn Gibson. Yes, the environment and context plays a big role, and you can have set a strategy and have the results you want to achieve, but ultimately there's external influences on organizations as well, and that needs to be taken into account. And really, I think building capability within people really provides the opportunity for the organization to be agile and therefore adapt to the environment. All right, and that may be chasing other organizational results or whatever it is, but my experience is that investing in people, developing their capability, and really kind of focusing on some of those employee results provides benefit around the other types of results. Okay. So Greenie Zakata, yeah. So what you joined late and you'd like a copy of the slides. What I will say, Greenie or Jeannie, sorry, I misread that. Everybody who has registered for today's webinar will get access to the recording of it. So that will happen either over the weekend or on Monday. And you'll get an email with an access to the recording, so you can watch back and you can get the content from the slides there. All right. Okay. Tim Lilly. Okay. In my work context, everyone is focused on customer results. All right. Run an ice hockey organization with 6 teams. Is that the context of who my customers are? Yeah. Look, it's an interesting one. Tim, so I mean, you're probably going to have multiple customers, and depending on what aspect and what kind of focus that is. You know, what I could say, from an organization perspective, the teams could be considered the customers, or they could be considered the employees, depending on what your position is, right? The customers might be those that come and watch and entertain, the spectators, right? So when it comes to sport, you know, I think it's important to recognize that sport is a form of entertainment. So those being entertained and receiving the benefit from the actual playing of it, you know, they would be the spectators, and so therefore they would be the customers. But at the same time, you know, at a kind of local level, you still might have your players. They play to play rather than play to be professionals, I guess. And so they might be considered the customers as well. I probably need to understand a little bit more about the context of the nature of the organization to answer that more definitively, but could be both, I guess. Lael asks, what would you say is one of the most important qualities to possess to be successful within an IO role? So Lael's studying to be an organizational psychologist, which is what I am. Look, ultimately, I guess in that role, Lael, what I would say is an ability to help the people that you serve, your customers, achieve their results. And so, you know, whether that's through coaching, whether that's as an internal role and you're, you know, contributing to the designing and delivery of projects and that sort of thing, it's an ability to understand the results and what needs to happen, and really achieving them in a way that provides a great experience for people is what I'd say, right? If you can facilitate that process as whether a consultant, whether as internal or external, then that's going to be probably lead to your success. So look, guys, we are just before 1 o'clock. So time is drawing to a close. If you want to jump off, or you need to jump off, you've got a 1 o'clock, totally fine. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to stay on here for another couple of minutes, and I'm going to answer the questions that have been put in the chat. And if you have to jump off and your question hasn't been answered, then as I said, you're going to get access to the recording, so you can watch the end of the recording and hopefully get your answer. I am always available if you want to reach out via email at cliff@lumion.com.au or through LinkedIn as well. You can ask more questions from there. I'm always happy to jump on and answer as well. So if you have to go, that's fine. I'll see you next time. And I'm going to stick around for another couple of minutes and answer questions. So Josh Barnes, you have said, I've noticed in the utilities trade industry that there tends to be a massive disparity between field and blue collar workers and office and white collar workers. Have you come across this in organizations, and have you worked within that context? What's your opinion? Yeah, 100%. I've seen it multiple times. I've kind of worked in that industry a little bit. There is really a tendency to get an us and them kind of context, right? That occurs, and that can be really hard and really entrenched to kind of break down, really. And look, in the context of what we're talking about today, the results can actually be a mechanism to break down that divide. You know, really good leader might say, well, hey, these are the common results that we're both working towards, and then facilitate a process of, hey, what are the specific results that you are working towards in one group, and what are the specific results there? Right now, I want the blue collar workers, I want you guys to help the white collar workers achieve their results, and the white collar workers, I want you to get out and help the blue collar workers achieve their results, and actually sit down and you know, where previously there has been no attention paid by one party to the other person's results, actually sitting them down in a room and kind of having the conversation of, hey, here's how you can help them all right, and here's how they can help you, can be a really effective way to kind of break that down. Ultimately, what you need to do as a leader is try and foster this kind of one team mentality, or get everybody identifying as part of the one group and working towards one team with one set of goals. And that's how you kind of break that down. And as I said, you know, if from the stuff that we're talking about today, the results it could be one mechanism to do that successfully. All right, so I hope that helps you, Josh. Theron, all right. Okay, Theron, reach out to Josh Barnes and talk about that as well. All right, Sandy says, thank you, very insightful, awesome. All right, Annette, thank you. All right, it looks like that is all the questions that have been put through. So I am going to say sign off and say thank you very much for all of you who have stuck around. I hope you have a great day, a great weekend, and I will talk to you when I do. Until then, lead well.